This lesson is special right triangles. This is actually like a really easy way to do some shortcuts on stuff like the ACT and the SAT. And then we'll also use it when we do our trig unit. So this is special right triangles, and our learning target, I can use special right triangles to model and solve problems. Okay, so the first special right triangle that we talk about is called a 45, 45, 90. Alright, so that's because you have two 45-degree angles. So I'm going to call the legs x and x. So a leg equals x. The hypotenuse is going to be whatever the leg was times the square root of 2. So that seems a little bit weird. So the legs are always going to be congruent to each other. And then the hypotenuse is whatever the leg was times the square root of 2. So if you look at the practice, alright, we know that these are the two legs. So x would have to be 8 also. And then y would be what you got for the leg times the square root of 2. That's how you do that. Alright, if we look at the next one, these are two legs. So y would be 25. And then x, well, let me go, yeah, we're good. And then x, which is our hypotenuse, would be 25 times the square root of 2. Alright, gets a little bit trickier on this next one. So make sure you're watching what I do, because we're going to talk about some weird math stuff. Alright, so here are my two congruent sides. I know that the leg has been multiplied by the square root of 2 to get 19. Alright, so if I wanted to work backwards, I would have to do 19 divided by the square root of 2. Alright, whenever you have something like this, it's just some weirdness, like grammar and math type stuff, you can't ever have the square root of something on the bottom of a fraction. So what you do is you multiply by the radical. Alright, so if I multiply the top, 19 times the square root of 2 is 19 square root of 2 over, and you can do this in a calculator, the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is just 2. None of that reduces, so x and y are 19 square roots of 2 over 2, 19 square roots of 2 over 2. And once again, that was just working backwards because we were given the hypotenuse and we had to find the leg. Okay, so let's look at a 30, 60, 90 triangle. This one's a little more challenging. Alright, the shorter side is always going to be across from the small angle. So we're going to say the shorter leg is x. The longer leg is always across from 60 degrees. So we'll say the longer leg is x times the square root of 3. And the hypotenuse, of course, is across from the right angle. And that one we're going to call 2x. Okay. So if you look at the first practice one, some stuff we can fill in. We know that this angle up here is our 30-degree angle. Alright, so our shorter side is 5. If we want to find our longer side, it's what we got for the shorter side times the square root of 3, so 5 square root of 3. And then our hypotenuse is always the shorter side times 2. So the shorter side was 5, 5 times 2 is 10. So this right here is just a formula on how to find everything. Alright, if you look at the next one, I know that this angle is 60. Alright, so 14 is my short side. My longer side is going to be the short side times the square root of 3. And my hypotenuse is the short side times 2. 2 times 14, 28. Alright. Now on the last one, I know that this is 60 degrees. This one's a little bit different because I don't know what my short side is. The only thing I know is my hypotenuse. Remember that your hypotenuse is twice as long as your shorter side. So if the hypotenuse is 32, if I divide that by 2, I get my short side 16. My longer side, this right here, is whatever I got for the short side times the square root of 3. So that's how I got those values. Alright, so we're going to do 3 more examples. Alright, so short equals x, long is x times the square root of 3, and hypotenuse is 2 times x. Alright, so that's our little formula. So I want you to see if you can do this. Pause the video, try all 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it gives us the hypotenuse. We know that because it's across from the right angle. So my hypotenuse is twice as long as my short side, which means my short side, which is this right here, has to be 23. My longer side is my short side times the square root of 3, so that's how you would get those 2 values. Okay, for the next one, it gives me that my long side is 20. So I'm going to work backwards to figure out what my short side is. So here's my short side, and I know that 20 has been multiplied by the square root of 3. So to undo it, I would divide. Remember, you can't have a radical on the bottom, so you multiply by the radical. So the top becomes 20 square root of 3, the bottom 3. You can put that in your calculator to check behind me if you don't believe me. Okay, so y is 20 square root of 3 over 3. And then the hypotenuse is always twice as much as the longest side, it's the shorter side. So we get 40 square root of 3 over 3, twice as much. Okay, and then the last one, once again, we're given the longest side. We know that that number has been multiplied by the square root of 3. So if I wanted to undo it, I would divide by the square root of 3. So the nice thing about this one is these cancel out, which means that my short side is actually 9. And if I know my short side, then I know my hypotenuse is twice as much, so it's 18. Okay, so it's just a formula, but it is a little tricky figuring out what you have, what you don't have. Remember, the shortest side is going to be across from 30 degrees, the longest side is across from 60, and then the hypotenuse is across from the right angle. Okay, so now I'm just going to mix it up. Alright, so obviously you know this one is a 45, 45, 90 triangle. The hypotenuse is 28. I know that these 2 sides are exactly the same, and if you go back and look at that formula, in order to have gotten the hypotenuse, it had to be multiplied by the square root of 2. So to undo it, I would divide by the square root of 2. Anytime that happens, can't have a radical on the bottom, you multiply by the radical. So the top becomes 28 square root of 2, the bottom would be 2, and this can be simplified, just like when we were doing the quadratic formula. So this is going to simplify to 14 square root of 2. And x and y are both the same, so they're both 14 square root of 2. Alright, so first thing I can figure out is one triangle is a 45, 45, 90. The other is a 30, 60, 90, so we're looking at 2 different formulas. The other thing I need to realize is that I'm going to look at the 30, 60, 90 triangle first. It's telling me that my shortest side is 9. Okay, so I know that if my short side is 9, my hypotenuse has to be twice as much, so 18. And I know that my longest side is the short side times the square root of 3. So this is actually going to be 9 square roots of 3. Okay. Alright. So now I'm just going to redraw the 45, 45 because it's a little hard to see. So here's my 45, 45, 90. I'm looking for x and y, and I know the hypotenuse is 9 square roots of 3. I also know that these two are going to be congruent, and I know that because it's a 45, 45, 90, the leg has been multiplied by the square root of 2 to get 9 square roots of 3. So I'm going to undo it. So I'm going to do 9 square roots of 3 divided by the square root of 2. Can't have a radical on the bottom, so I multiply by the radical on the bottom. The top becomes 9 because it's the only number outside. The radical, I'm going to multiply the numbers inside. 3 times 2 is 6. And on the bottom, that becomes 2. So both of my answers, x and y, 9 square roots of 6 over 2. 9 square roots of 6 over 2. That one's pretty tricky. Alright, I want you to try this one all by yourself. Pause the video, see what you can do. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I know on the 45, 45, 90 triangle, those two legs are equal to each other. I know that if the hypotenuse is 15 square roots of 2, it's already been multiplied by the square root of 2, so I'm going to divide. These cancel out, so I get that z is 15, but then also this side up here is 15. Okay, so I'm going to redraw my 30, 60, 90. I got 15, x, y, this is my 30, 90. Okay, so what I have right now is my longest side. If I'm going from long to short, I know that that has been multiplied by the square root of 3, so I'm going to divide by the square root of 3 to work backwards. Can't have the square root of 3 on the bottom, so I multiply the top and bottom by square root of 3. I get 15 square root of 3 over 3. 15 divided by 3 reduces to 5 square roots of 3. Okay, so y is 5 square roots of 3. Alright, so that's my short side. I know that my hypotenuse is twice as long as my short side, so that would be 10 square roots of 3. Alright, that one is a really hard lesson. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll be happy to help. Try the assignment.